Maseches Bava Metzia. We are learning Maseches Bava Metzia now. One second, please. Yeah. Maseches Bava Metzia. Sorry for the noise in the background. We will try and overcome. We shall overcome and learn Maseches Metzia Daf Kuf Tes Amud Aleph. However, we are now in Daf Kuf Ches Amud Beis. We are learning about neighbors. I'm sorry that it doesn't look so nice for the viewers at home, but this is Reuven who wants to sell his field, and Shimon is the neighbor who would like to buy the field, and Levi is the buyer. Levi bought the field from who? From Reuven. Whether Shimon, the neighbor, knew about it or didn't know about it, Lamaisa Shimon, in the classical regular case, Shimon can say, I wanted to buy it because I'm a neighbor, I have the right of way. I was the first in line. You, Levi, even if you already bought it, I can kick you out. I can evict you, and your sale will be annulled. Because I, Shimon, want to extend my field to the next door field, to the next field. Yeah, I want to have it all in one go, all adjacent, all one big area. And therefore, halacha sides with Shimon. Halacha says that in many cases, Levi should be taken out, providing that Shimon, the neighbor, can offer the same amount of money as Levi does, right? And as we're going to see soon, with the same payment method and the same ease of being paid on time, yeah? Okay, otherwise, Levi can say, listen, by the way, the chiyuv is on Levi. Levi is the one that which we put the finger on. We point the finger on Levi and say, it's not fair. It's not right of you to buy the field from Reuven while you know that Shimon really is a potential interested buyer and he goes before you, but the mere fact that he lives there. We spoke about many different exceptions to the rule, etc., etc. We're going to see today, examine if that applies to apartments or only to fields, as we discussed before. One interesting point which I want to add regarding yesterday, we said yesterday that if the sale has to be very, very quick and rushed. For example, let's say Reuven has to get rid of the field, like a hot potato. Why does he have to get rid of the field? Because he has to pay taxes. If he doesn't pay taxes tomorrow, 27 years in jail, New York. And what happens then? So Levi came very quickly, middle of the night, to make the deal, helping Reuven sell the field and get cash that he needs, or for other urgent things, such as what? Yisomim to feed almono, right, etc., to bury someone, a relative. You can't let the mace wait. Yeah, it costs money to bury someone. In such a case, Shimon's claim would not be heard because we say, we're sorry, Shimon, we don't have time to start advertising. Maybe there are other neighbors, maybe it takes time. It had to be done very, very rushed. What happens if Shimon says that they're lying? Shimon says, no, I think Levi and Reuven are just lying to me and to everybody, and they claim that it's doing it for tax, so they should be able to sell it, to sell to Levi, and it's really just a lie. So we don't believe him. It's a shayla. Once Levi bought the field from Reuven, and now Shimon claims, no, they're lying when they say just for tax. If you have a proof for that, great. If you don't have a proof for that, then the field is already in the hands of Levi. Now go prove it. If you manage to prove it, you say there are no taxes there, or Adim come and tell you otherwise, bevakasha. Otherwise, no. Again, apologies for the noise. Okay, fine. One second. Shchene ha'ir. Yeah, we are in Kuf Ches Amud Beis. Shchene ha'ir. Yeah, that is about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. About 10 lines from the narrow lines. Yeah, from the last narrow line. Shchene ha'ir v'shchene sode. What happens now? According to Rashi, this halacha, the upcoming halacha, is not about bar matzah. He doesn't talk about the halacha of bar matzah. He talks about some general good advice who you should sell your field to, which means, let's say you have a field, and that field, the neighbors are irrelevant. They're not interested in buying. They're going. There are no neighbors. I don't know. It's a lonely place, lonely island in Dubai. I don't know. It's that's not relevant. Elamai, there's a question if you want to sell your field, and you have two interested buyers. One of them are shchene ha'ir. One of them are neighbors who live next to you, next door where you live. You live in Nachal Dolev 38, and your neighbor next door wants to buy your field that is far away. Yeah. Or v'shchene sode, you have another field, a different field, and you have people who are your neighbors next field to you. Yeah, you understand what's going on here? The guy lives in Bethshemesh, he has his neighbors, in his building. Okay. He also has other neighbors in a different field. Yeah. And then he also has a field that he wants to sell. Who should you sell your field to? The field is not adjacent to those people. Okay. Let's say your field that you want to sell is in the Galil up north, and you have another field near Bethshemesh with other field owners. Basically, you have your neighbor, you have two types of neighbors. Your neighbors at work, which is the field, and your neighbor, residential neighbors where you live. These are two groups of people, and both of them would like to buy the field that you put up for sale in the Golan up north. Then what? Shchena ir v'shchena sodeh. Who should I sell it to? They're both nice guys, both offer me the same price, same conditions. What would the halacha recommend? Which one should I sell it to maintain good relationship with them? Shchena ir koidmin. The people who live next door to you in town where you actually live, they come first. You should maintain good relationship with the people that you see every day. Your neighbors, you have to borrow milk and eggs. These are the people you have to maintain good relationship and sell them rather than people that are just next door to you at your workplace, which is the field. Now, another question. By the way, Rashi proves that this has nothing to do with Bar Matzah, with Vasisa Yoshev Atoiv, because the Lashon of the Gemara here, if you notice, doesn't talk about Bar Matzah. The Gemara doesn't say Bar Matzah. It just says Koidmin. Doesn't say Bar Matzah, and Rashi has other proofs as well. Shochem v'Talmid Chacham. What happens when you have a neighbor and a Talmid Chacham? Yeah, in other words, your next door neighbor wants to buy your field, and another person, as a Talmid Chacham, wants to buy. What's a Talmid Chacham? A person who knows here and there from Shas, from Torah. He can talk in learning. He can analyze a sugya. He knows poiskim. He knows halacha. Such a person, of course, only if he has good midos. By the way, it says in Halacha Shulchan Aruch, a Talmid Chacham that's mekel in halacha in a way that is below halachic standard and bad midos, he's worse than other people. We're talking here about a person who's really a good person. May we all be zoiche. So you have a shochen versus Talmid Chacham. Each one wants to buy your field. None of them is a neighbor of the field. It's not Bar Matzah. Talmid Chacham koidem. Oh, Talmid Chacham goes first. Okay, Talmid Chacham. Why? There's a mitzvah to be mehane nechosov, mehane Talmid Chacham nechosov. There's a mitzvah to benefit the Talmid Chacham. It's a very great thing. That's how you stick to Hashem. You cling to Hashem through clinging to people who are infused with Torah. Now, koroi v'Talmid Chacham. You have a relative, a brother. Your brother wants to buy a field. Brother, sell me your field. And the Talmid Chacham is not your relative. And he says, please sell me your field. Talmid Chacham koidem. So Talmid Chacham is number one. He beats what? He surpasses a shochen and a korov, a neighbor and a relative. Now, the runner-up. Now let's go for the silver medal, not the gold. Let's go for the runner-up. Ibai lehu. Now comes the question. Shochen v'korov. What happens? None of them is Talmid Chacham. None of them is an especially learned person. You have a neighbor who wants to buy your field, and a relative who's not your neighbor who wants to buy the field. You have your neighbor from Dolev 38 wants to buy your field in the Golan, and your sister from London, she also wants to buy the field. Who should you sell it to? What's Aloche? Toshma. It says already in the words of King Solomon, the words in Mishlei, Shlomo HaMelech says, Toiv shochen korov me'achrochoik. A relative, a shochen korov, a shochen, a neighbor that is close by, is better than a brother that's far away. The one you're dealing with, the one that you have an everyday, day-to-day interaction with, is the shochen, the neighbor. You have to maintain good relationship with him before you maintain relationship with your brother or sister who live far away. Yeah, of course, help them more maybe, but lamaisa, on a day-to-day basis, the one that you have to deal with more is the neighbor. Now, we're back to Hani Zuzitavi. We're basically back to Bar Matzah. Yeah, Bar Matzah. What is Bar Matzah? I want to sell my field. A guy comes, Levi, my name is Reuven, let's say, I want to sell my field. Levi comes, cash in hand, cash, hard cash. I want to buy your field. Comes the neighbor afterwards, even after the deal is done. No, I want it. I deserve it. Yeah, so what do we say? So says the halacha, Hani Zuzi Tavi, Hani Zuzi Tkuli. What happens if each one of them, the neighbor and the other buyer, yeah, the neighbor wants it, and the buyer who already got it, one of them brings, they bring two types of money, both with the same value, but there are different types of money. This is very hard for people of 2023 to relate to. Today, coins, as we use coins, except for tzedakah, yeah. Today, coins are coins. They're minted, right? And they have all the same value. Back then, it wasn't like that. Because actually, the coins in the times of the Talmud of the Gemara, they had their weight. In other words, every coin was viewed like an item. Yeah. In other words, the coin had, some coins were rusty, they were worth less. Some coins were heavier and they're worth more. Yeah. It could be the same king or basically the same value is on them, but some of them weigh a bit more, so they're worth more. And some of them, for other reasons, are more sellable. So says the Gemara, Hani zuzi tavi, Hani zuzi tikuli. What does it mean? One of them, either the neighbor or the foreign, the out of town buyer, brings a type of zuzi with him, a bag, a patch with zuzim that are tavi, meaning that there are zuzim that are easy transferable. People like to use them. Yeah, they're more popular. Yeah, let's say dollar is more popular than peso, whatever. Yeah, let's say the hani zuzi tikuli. But the other zuzim, the other person, either the buyer or the neighbor, the other person brings you zuzim that are heavier. They look better and are better. They're way more. So intrinsically, they're worth more. But from some reason, people don't like to use them. So, actually, I know why. We spoke about it in Azov. Yeah, remember? Because the ones that are lighter, people like to use them more because they're lighter. I think. I'm not sure that's the story over here. Yeah, the ones that are heavier are worth more. But Lamaisa, they're not so popular, they're not so easy to carry. They're not so usable. People like credit card, it's nice and light. So that's the Tavi and Kuli. In other words, each one brings a matbeah that some people like to use the Tavi more, and other people like to use the Tikuli more. Both have pros and cons, okay? Something like that. Yeah, let's say dollar is usually more stable than shekel. Let's say you go to the Makalet, people prefer shekel over dollar, something like that. So let's say one comes with dollars, one's with shekels in today's world. Leis b'mishum dina de bar matzah. Bar matzah doesn't apply. Bar matzah doesn't apply. What does that mean? A person can say, Mr. Reuven, the seller, can say, listen, it's all very nice, Mr. Neighbor. You're bringing me another kind of money. I like his kind of money. You're paying me shekels and shekels only. I like dollars. I'm an American and deal more with chutzlaretz, let's say. That's in today's world. I think it's a good example. Yeah. So you can tell the neighbor, Mr. Neighbor, of course I owe it to you before I owe it to him, but not in any expense. Yeah, not under any circumstances. If I prefer that kind of money that he brings me more than the type of money that you, Mr. Neighbor, bring me, I'll stick with him. I'll stick with Levi the buyer, and I'll sell him because the type of money he brings me is better for me. And the same goes for the following case. Hani tsairi, the hani shari. What does that mean? One of them gives him an envelope, secretive, closed, and sealed, with wax, with this. And he says, this is that, doesn't matter which one again. One of them, either Levi the buyer or Shimon the neighbor. One of them gives him in a closed envelope. Don't open until, here, I'm giving you cash now. No. I'm not delaying. They're both running. It's a competition between the neighbor and the buyer. Who's going to get the field first? And of course, the neighbor is sure he has the right of way. However, if one of them brings him, let's say the neighbor in this case, the neighbor brings him a closed envelope and says, don't open it until 2 weeks' time. I promise you, you know me, I'm a good neighbor, and I'm telling you, inside is a 2 million shekel in this, closed envelope. And of course, you shouldn't open it. And he's scared to open it because maybe then, he's going to claim there was more money. Actually, I'm not sure he even told him how much money is there to begin with. Because it's closed, that's the Shulchan Aruch says, because it's closed, he has to wait. He told him you have to wait until you only open it, 2 weeks' time or so. The Hani Shari, Mr. Levi, the buyer from the outside world, gives him cash open right now. He can use it straight away. Leis be mishum dina de bar matzah. No, bar matzah doesn't apply. Why? Although he gave him cash now, the neighbor, but because this cash is supposed to stay closed in the envelope, right? Mimela, the seller can say, I'm not interested in waiting. And if I open it too early, you're going to start messing up and say, no, there was more money, there was less money, you're going to have issues. I don't want that. And therefore, even though you gave me the cash and I believe there's cash, you're delaying my ability to use the cash. Pashenk and Mr. Levi, who's so easy and so nice, he's giving me the cash straight away. I can put it in the bank in a second. Of course, who says I should delay it for you? And on the same token, also about the factor of time comes another case, another example. Omar, if the neighbor heard, oh, there's a sale going on, even if the sale went through, and now the neighbor comes all angry and says, I have the right of way of the Hasisa Hayoshar Batoiv. Omar says, Mr. Neighbor, we call him Shimon, Azil, I'll go, the itrach daitizuzi. I'll go, what's litroach? I'll work hard, I'll go into the hassle, and I'll bring Zuzi. I'll start making money, I'll get a promotion quickly, I'll borrow the money, I'll break my savings, which can take a few days, right? Yeah, and then I'll bring the Zuzi, I'll bring the money. We don't wait for him because Mr. Reuven, the seller, has every right in the world to say, I'm sorry, Levi is giving me money now. You're telling me you'll be toreach. Yeah, maybe it will take 1 second. I don't know. But the way you phrase your own words is, I'll work. I'll do some tircha. I'll go into the hassle and get you the money. You want to victimize yourself? Great. But Lamaisa, you're telling me now that it takes you time. I don't have to wait for you. Vasisya Shavatov. Again, Vasisya Shavatov also applies to the seller. Why should the seller wait? However, a similar yet different case, Omar Ezil Aiti Zuzi. Oh, let's say he comes and he says, I'll go and I'll bring money. He didn't say, I'll go, I'll work and bring the money. There was a sale. Reuven, you sold Levi? Wait. Don't worry. I'll bring you the money from my house. Imagine yourself a world with no bank transfers. Yeah, just you actually have to go home and bring a bag of money. Yeah, like in the good old days. Yeah, and let's say it says, I'll go and I'll bring you money. Then depends. Chazinan, we should see. We should examine it and see. If he's a person who's Amid means in Hebrew like well-to-do, upper middle class. He's a person who has money. He's known to be a rich person. Then the Ozil Umaiti Zuzi, Amid also means we can assess, we can assume, we can evaluate. We can evaluate that this person probably has money in his house. He seems to be well-to-do. We know his financial situation more or less, and we believe him is going to go home, bring money. There's money lying in his house. Makes sense. Then Natrinale, we wait for him. If all it takes is going home and coming back to the field to Mr. Reuven, the seller, getting the money, we do wait for him. That's a decent thing to do. He does have Yosher V'Tov rights. If he's not assumed to have that much money, if he's not assumed to really have that much money at home or in the bank, I'll do a bank transfer. Who says you have the money in the bank? I thought you're just a poor guy. If he's not up to having such money at home or available within reach, we don't wait for him. Says the Shulchan Aruch, how long do you wait? Yeah, let's say the guy is a wealthy guy. How long do you wait? Says the Shulchan Aruch, I saw it this morning. Shulchan Aruch says we wait until he goes home. Again, no bank transfers. Yeah, let's say the guy has no smartphone. He has to go home to his computer. Yeah, he has a computer stuck to his, yeah, that's where he has Wi-Fi and computer. Only there in his house, he can do the transfer. Yeah, or in the olden days, he has to go home. The amount of time you wait is very simple. You have to wait until he goes home and come back. Depends where his home is. If his home is next door. If his home is in Metula, until he goes to Metula. That amount of time you wait until he goes home and comes back with the cash, you wait. If we know going to Metula from Bechemish to Metula and he has a car, takes, 3.5 hours each direction. We went at 7 hours and he didn't come. Then the sale stays by Levi, the other buyer, because we gave him enough time to go home and come back. And from some reason, again, unless he calls us and says, I'm stuck in the traffic, I don't know. Yeah, but be'etzem, it shouldn't be much more than going home and coming back. If he waited longer than that and he starts giving excuses and stories, then we say, I'm sorry, time is up. And the neighbor here gives cash right now. There is already cash given by, not the neighbor, but the other person. Then we don't wait for the neighbor with all the respect of a Sisa Yoshavato. Now comes the next case, the first wide line. Up until now, we assumed that both neighbors own fields, right? And the both full owners of the fields. Reuven wants to sell his field and Shimon wants to buy Reuven's field next door, and they're both legal owners. Okay, so now what happens when some people, that's the next case, are more equal than others? Let's say one of them owns the field properly, and the other one owns inside his field a house, but that house is not completely his. which means I'm giving you an introduction here that's important. Let's say Reuven has a field. Shimon has a house in the field. Now, of Reuven, Shimon is not a renter. Shimon is the owner of the house. However, what Shimon's house doing in the middle of Reuven's field? Reuven sold him the rights to have the house there only as long as the house is there. If the house breaks down, if there is tsunami, fire, Miba Maimu, Miba Esh, Rosh Hashanah, Rabbi, what happened in Hawaii? What happened in Turkey? All we think we're so smart in 2023, technology can deal with everything. I don't think so. Yeah. Yeah. People's houses get bombed by terrorists. You know, a lot of things can happen to people's houses. Lo aleinu. So let's say Reuven told Shimon, Shimon, I give you the right to build your house in my land. As long as the house is there, yeah, you're allowed to be here with your nice fancy house. What if Khalila, the house breaks down for whichever reason we enumerated before, you don't have the right to rebuild. Yeah. So your rights in the field are weaker than mine. The field is mine, mine, mine. You have rights to have the house there as long as the house is there. You don't have a right to rebuild. You don't have the conceptual building rights to always build there, whatever happens. So we're not really equals. Reuven is much more of an owner than Shimon, right? Shimon is there as long, could be the house will be there for 1,000 years. There are houses that exist 1,000 years, very nice. But if not, then you're out of the game. So there's no equality over here. And now let's say one of them wants to sell. Oh, says the Gemara, Ar'a dechad, the land belongs to one person. Ubate dechad. By the way, it doesn't say house, it says houses. I don't know why. Bate is plural. Let's say even, maybe the Gemara wants to give us a more of a, a picturesque scene, more of a chiddush. Even if he owns 3-4 houses, yeah? Imagine yourself the field of Reuven, and Shimon owns like 3-4 houses, maybe he rents them out, right? But he owns the houses, but his existence in the place is more temporary. And then Mari Ara Me'akev Amari Bati, full stop. That now comes Mr. Landowner, and comes Mr. House's owner, yeah, and the house's owner says, I want to sell my houses to another person. Let's say he has 3 houses. I'll stay by one. The other 2 houses I'm selling to Levi, to a guy from out of town for a different place. Then Mr. Landowner can say, no, I'm a neighbor. I'm your neighbor. I'm in the field right next to your house, or even inside, yeah. And therefore, I want to get the houses first. Who says I want the houses right next to my field? You know how long it takes me every day to get to my field from my house in Netanya? 2 hours, yeah. And therefore, I want to be the owner of those houses. And he's right. That's classical Bar Matzra. The Chiddush comes now. When don't we say Bar Matzra? Mashen ken Mari Bati loy me'akev Amari de'ara. The other way around, no. Let's say the owner of the houses, yeah, tells the landowner, Mr. Landowner, I heard you sold it to another person. Chutzpah. I want to buy the field because I want a field right next to my house. No, because your existence here is weaker than mine. Yeah, you don't have the right to tell me who to sell it to. Your houses anyway can be, especially back then, the housing was much more, the houses back then were not as strong as today. But even today, things can happen. Because your existence here is weaker than me, you are not a big Baal Dov or Baal Dea to start telling me your opinion, who to sell, who not to sell. I'm the real owner here of the land. Land always stays there. Even if it gets burned, it recuperates, yeah? And therefore, since I'm the real owner and you're less of an owner, I can tell you to sell it to me first. You cannot tell me, the landowner, who's more stable here, you cannot tell me that you dafka want it. And the same goes for the next case. Ara dechad, the dikli dechad. Very, very similar. The land belongs to one person, and the dekolim, there are palm trees, very common in Bava. They grow there, the palm trees. And those palm trees are there as long, enjoy it while it lasts. In other words, as long as the palm trees are there, they belong to you. If they die, if they fly with the wind, I don't know what, tsunami, shmunami, they're not yours anymore. You don't have a right to replant. Then again, and the same story happened. So the ownership of the palm tree owner is much weaker than the ownership of the field owner. Mari de'ara, the owner of the land, the landlord, kipshutoi, matzi me'akev mari dikli. He can be ma'akev and told the mari dikli, did you sell your dekolim to the Levi? I want those dekolim. They're in the middle of my field, banging my field. I want those dekolim. That would work great for me. That's a Sisir Shabbat Tov. I'm an owner. I want the next door. It's not even next door, it's inside. I wanted to call him in my field to be mine. Don't sell him to a foreign person. Mashenken, or by the way, I keep confusing. The Taina is not against the seller, it's against the buyer. It's the same thing. The kid he doesn't want the deal. Doesn't want the deal. Mari dikli loy matzi me'akev amari de'ara. Oh, Mari dikli, Meshenken, the owner of the palm trees, he hears all of a sudden one morning that the owner of the land sold the land, is about to, or even sold the land to another person from the outside, and he starts shouting, "No, I'm the one with the palm trees here. I want the whole field here. I'm giving you cash, fresh cash right now." No, I'm sorry. Your ownership is way weaker than mine. You don't have a say as much as I have a say, and therefore I'll sell it to whoever I want because your ownership anyway here, yeah, here now, gone tomorrow. Now comes another chiddush. What is the purpose of the purchase? Some people buy land for what? To plow the field. Some of them to plant trees. By the way, before we continue, let me just point one thing which Shulchan Aruch says. If you followed what I said, you tell me now, what's going to be if the tree owner or the house owner have rights that if the tree Lolenu gets bombed, or the house gets bombed, or the tree falls apart, they have the right to replant and rebuild forever and ever, them and their children. Then they're equals. Then there are equals, right? The only reason why the tree/house owner is weaker is because he doesn't have the right to replant and regrow and rebuild. But if he does, then he's an equal neighbor. Yeah, and if the landowner says to the house owner, "I'm selling to someone else," if the house owner has rights forever and ever, that if anything happens, he has building rights on that spot forever, like in the tabu, like in fixed, then they're equal neighbors, and each one can be me'akev on the other to sell it to him and not to people from the outside. And then we start the new case. Question time. Good. I accept very nice questions and comments here. I want to point one thing. Toysus here points out that Bar Matzah, this whole halacha, does not exist when it comes to two houses. If it's a house and a land, v'chula, yes. But if you have an apartment that you want to buy, according to Toysus, strongly so, says Toysus, as we're going to see soon, is going to prove it from the Gemara very soon, the ideal Bar Matzah is to be agriculturally bigger. I want a bigger field, as the Gemara is going to tell us soon, because I want a bigger furrow or bigger furrows that my whole field will go through and through, much bigger. The Shenken houses, it's true that some people like bigger houses. Says Toysus, that's not, I mean, he doesn't even go into that, but it's not enough of a reason to say Bar Matzah. So if you want to buy an apartment, which people tend to do sometimes, then what? You don't have to knock the next door neighbor, and he has no right to object because Bar Matzah does not apply to houses or fields, to houses, apartments, only to fields. That's Das Toysus, and that's what I told you at the beginning of the sugya. That's not so simple. Other Rishonim argue, and Shulchan Aruch does bring the other opinion, actually, or the Ramah, it's brought down, that that Bar Matzah may apply to houses as well as to fields. So that ask your local Orthodox Dayan, not rabbi, LOD. Ask your Dayan before you buy an apartment if you have to consult and see if the neighbors want to buy it or not. Maybe yes, maybe no. You have to see it's a machlokes. Although it is brought down, this opinion is brought down as quite a strong opinion in the Shulchan Aruch that applies in apartments as well. However, I jumped the gun a little bit. Let's go now and finish the sugya. Another case, we're in the third wide line. As I told you, as we all know, some people buy land for what? To plow, to plant a field, to sow seeds, to plant trees. That's a different purpose. To build houses, or to dig gold, all kinds of things. Says the Gemara, Ara lebati, the Ara lezara. One person says, I want to buy this field because I want to build houses there. The other person says, I want to buy the field because I want to sow seeds, wheat and barley and corn. Both of them argue, says the Gemara, which one should I sell it to? The neighbor automatically? No. Yishuv odif, which means it's better to sell it to the person who wants to build houses there, even if he's not the neighbor. If the neighbor wants to buy it in order to make a field over there, grow wheat and barley, then we don't sell it to him. Why? Because the buyer actually wants, the Levi, the buyer from the outside world, He wants to build houses there. Why? Because says the Gemara, Yishuv Odif, even not in Eretz Yisrael. I saw the Noise Kalim, even not in Eretz Yisrael, house is something which is usually more stable than just wheat and barley. The wheat and the barley, yeah, land beds is stable, obviously, but to actually have people living there is something more stable and more, so to speak, serious and more kavua, more stable, more fixed, and therefore it's more of like a serious purpose that halacha views as something more serious, more permanent, rather than just planting, sowing a field. What happens with trees is a machloikas. Trees last much, much, much longer than wheat and barley and cereals. If a person says, I want to have an orchard there of tapuzim, of oranges or vineyard, those things, they last longer than zroim, than cereals, than those kind of things. And therefore, that's already a question. But houses surpass them all. If somebody we know is serious, he shows you the plans, he wants to really build houses over there, that's what we want. We want people to be living there. It's something much more stable, and the purpose justifies that, and that trumps the concept of a Sisra Shabbatov of the neighbor. Now comes another question. Who's called a neighbor? Who's a neighbor? How close by does he have to be? We know a neighbor means adjacent. They're mamish like bordering on each other. Fine, very nice. Asks the Gemara the following question. Afsik, let's say between the two fields of the seller and the interested buyer, there is an interruption, a natural but tough interruption. Not a gutter, not a not a fence. A fence is obviously gonna get rid of the fence once he buys the second field. What about afsik meshunisa or richba de dikla? Meshunisa is a rock. Between the two fields divides a natural divider of a strong rock in between them. You can't plow the rock, right? Yeah, or richba de dikla, there's a natural fence from trees. A lot of trees that grow next to each other in a way, and they're thick, hard trees. It's a natural thicket of trees amongst them, like natural divider from trees, and they stop in between the fields. And then Mr. Seller can say, what's your big interest in buying the field? You want to expand your field? You can't. Yeah, you can't get rid of that rock. You can't get rid of those trees, let's say. It's not feasible, yeah? It's going to cost you $1 million. It's not something the government won't allow you. It's against nature. The green people will kill you. Whatever. You can't get rid of that, yeah? And therefore, anyhow, you won't be able to work it together. Says the Gemara, let's see. Chazina, let's examine. Im yochel lachnis ba'afilu telem echad, is ba mishum dina de ba'matzra. V'iloi, leis ba mishum dina de ba'matzra. Interesting. If that natural divider, let's say there is a breach in that border, and let's say there's a rock, and in between, the person is able to lehachnis, to insert and have through one furrow, even one furrow to connect the two fields is there, then there is bar matzra. Then you can say, yes, because I have one area of excess between the two fields, and the telem, the furrow, can be worked, that one furrow is worth it to me, and in that respect, I am more than Levi, who is a guy from the outside, right? And then we say there's bar matzra. If you cannot have even one telem, one furrow through and through, it's completely hermetically sealed, then we say, I'm sorry, there's no point of bar matzra. Says Tosfos, this is a source. You see, it's only when it comes to agriculture when we say bar matzra. Comes to apartments, we don't say that the shittas Tosfos. Okay, that's it, what Tosfos says. I'm sure the other things I wanted to say and I forgot. Now comes the final point about bar matzra. Remember, Daf Kuf Ches is all about bar matzra. It appears in many other places in Shas, but this is the main source of Metzia Kuf Ches. Kach, take. Hani, what about internal politics? Up until now, everything was so nice and good. There was Reuven and Shimon. Reuven wants to sell, Shimon wants to buy, and Levi is the guy from the outside. What about if Reuven has 10 neighbors? Okay, 4. Yeah, he has a field in each direction, and there's internal politics between the neighbors. They all want to use that trump card of right? What do you do then? Yeah, there's Reuven in the middle. Yeah, there's Shimon, Naphtali, Zvulun, Binyamin, whoever. They're all there. Hani Dalet Bnei Matzroni. There were 4 Matzranim, 4 bordering people, bordering fields. The Kadin Chad Minai Vizabin. One of them was just quicker. I hope they don't punch each other in the nose. I don't know technically what happens. One of them would just quick in the draw. He was the first one who bought it. Quick cash right now in the middle of the night. I'm coming for Sisra Sharatov. So are the others. Spina is Bini. He won it. He won the game. Yeah, they all have equal rights. He is the one who jumped he didn't jump the queue. There is no queue. Yeah, they all have the same rights, same level of rights. The one who got there and paid first comes, first served. Yeah, the Kula Otsubadi Adodi. They all came together, all coming panting to Reuven's house. They all run and they came together, boom, and they offer the money. Yeah, can you imagine? They all 1, 2, 3, boom. They all put the money on the table. What do you do then? As we said at the beginning of the Masechta, you split, you divide. Look at the beautiful picture at the bottom of the page. You split it bekarnizol. Karnizil is called alachson, better known in English as diagonal. In other words, each one gets a quarter of the field. Yeah, diagonally divided, you divide it, like with an X. Each neighbor gets the quarter, that triangle of the pizza, the cake that is next to him. Yeah, Shimon gets a quarter, Levi gets a quarter, Yehuda gets a quarter, and Issachar gets a quarter. Each one gets a quarter because they all have the same rights. They all came together, 1, 2, 3, boom, and then they all have the rights and they all have the parts in it. Very good, and we're continuing to the next Mishnah. Yeah, now it's good time for questions because I don't think we'll have more questions later. Kuf Tes Amud Aleph is today's page. There's the Heilige Mishnah. Amikabel Sodom Echaveiroi Lishonim Muotois. Let's say a person is Mikabel, a person is now working in his friend's field, and the person is a Chochil, he's paying, a set amount, and he accepted the field to work in that field for less than 7 years. Why is 7 years such an important thing? Not because of Shemitah. He's there for less than 7 years, that was the agreement. Because he's staying there for a short period of time, that limits him and what he can do in two different ways. A loiza and a pishtan. He's not allowed to sow it with pishtan, with flax. He's not allowed to sow flax in there. Why? Flax really depletes the ground. Flax is very aggressive on the ground. And after 1 year of planting pishtan, you need 7 years to recuperate. So if you're there only for 6 years, it's not fair. Why? Because you're actually planting it 1 year of pishtan, and then the bailim won't be able in 6 years' time, right? Or in 5 years' time, you'll be out of there. After 1 year of pishtan, you had your pishtan, you had your fun. Then the 7th year will be back by the bailim. You won't be able to do anything, right? You'll have to let it lay fallow. It's not right. So you're not allowed to sow it with pishtan. Now, the emlo bekoiros shikma. Oh, koiros shikma is the big business here. Shikma, I think shikma is called in English sycamore. In any event, the shikma is a tree. That tree has a branch that grows and grows and grows, and it's a very, very valuable, good thing for building. It's a very good wood material, yeah, very good building material for the shikma. And the branches of the shikma, they have something very unique. They grow and grow, and only after 7 years of growing on the tree, you prune them, and then you can use them. But you don't cut them in less than 7 years, they're not good enough. You only become mature and thick and strong and good wood for your next house or for your fancy dining room table only after 7 years. It's a cycle. Once every 7 years, you have the shein is 7 years, the 7 years arrived, the shikma is there nice and big, then you cut it, you use it, and then they regrow naturally another 7 years. Now, let's say the person's there for 6 years, yeah? Now, let's say he came together when the shikma was in ground zero. Yeah, the shikma tree, the tree growth, the tree started to grow, and these are the amount of years the guy is there. He can't cut it at any point. Why? Because the mice, if he's cutting it, yeah, let's say he wants to cut it now or now, at any point he's going to cut it, yeah, and actually so the Cheshbon Shulchan Aruch, he will always be missing at least a year, right? In other words, let's say he got it when it's 0 years old, yeah, he's going to cut it now, he will be out of there, and he'll leave the person a shikma that is what? Only 1 year old. Not the same amount of time that he was there. Even if it's 3 or 4 years, I won't go into the cheshbon now because I don't have time. Maybe I'll say to you tomorrow. But lemaisa, if you are not there the entire 7 years, you're always cutting the shikma in the middle of its growth. So you, let's say, received it when he was 3 years old, and you're there for 6 years. Yeah. Now you're cutting it, and you are giving it back to the bailim when it's not the same stage of growth where you received it. Only if you're there for the entire 7 years, you can cut the shikma, saying, good, the shikma was 0. I was 0 amount of years. The shikma and I grew together. Look, I received the shikma when it was 0. If I'm there for 7 years, good, I cut it, and the shikma is back to 0. Yeah. But if otherwise, if the shikma and I are not the same, are not in tandem with each other, not the same speed, not the same time, I'm leaving the person a shikma, which is a stage shorter than when I arrived in the field. And that's not a fair thing to do. You have to leave the shikma the same stage where it was. Let's say the shikma was 4 years onto the tree and you're 7 years. Yeah, after 3 years, you're going to cut it and stay there another 4 years. Good, that's exactly what we want. Then you're leaving behind the shikma of 4 years. You leave it as you found it. You understand? It grows, you cut, back to 0. 7, you grow the chule. You always have to follow the same cycle. So that's the halacha in the Reisha. But if you accept the field for 7 years, yeah, then Shana Rishon is Reina Pishtan. The first year you're allowed to plant it with Pishtan. Why? Because you can plant it with Pishtan because you will have other 7 years to recuperate, and the person will find the field after 1 year of Pishtan and 6 years of recuperation, and that will be good for the next person who's going to come, maybe the Bailim. The Yeshlo the Koyer Shikma, and also he's allowed to take the Koyer of the Shikma. He's allowed to take the Koyer Shikma, because he's there for 7 years. However, he found the Shikma, right? The Shikma will be back to the same stage. It's a 7-year cycle. So whenever I hit either second year, the Shikma, I can cut it now. I can cut it at the end of 5 years, and then I'll stay there for another 2 years. I will leave behind a shikma of 2 years old, exactly the same as I found it. That's good to do. What's this whole business of the shikma? It grows every year, nicer, bigger, thicker, longer, until it reaches the maximum in 7 years. That's when you have the final product. And that leads to the machlokas of Abba and Rove. So the person is not allowed to cut the shikma too short, right? That's not allowed to do that, because it's not even worth it for you. Only after 7 years it reaches the height of its existence, and then it's good to be used as wood. Says the Gemara, Omar Abaye, big machlokas Abaye and Rove. That will also help us understand the whole business here. That's obvious that a person who received the field. Now, by the way, let me just get it straight. The person is not working on the shikma. The shikma grows by itself. The shikma is not a fruit tree. Yeah, it's an ilan srak, doesn't bear fruit, right? And secondly, the guy is working in the field in other things, tomatoes, potatoes, flax, seeds, other things. The shikma is a side benefit that we assume that if the shikma grew the entire cycle together with the person, the tree and the person grew together 7 years, at the end of 7 years, he'll be able to cut it when it reaches the 7th year. It became mature and good for wood. That is assumed that the person is allowed to take it if he was there long enough. If he wasn't there long enough, he can't take it. He won't want to take it. He hadn't reached its maturity. Comes Abba and says, wait a second, is it all or nothing? Or maybe you go with percentage. Says Abaye, b'shevach shikma yesh loy. In other words, yeah, let's say every year the shikma is worth more. Every year it's closer and closer and closer to what? To its maturity, to its 7th year. If I was now to sell the rights over the shikma in the first year, I would charge $1,000. In the 5th year, $5,000. Yeah, let's say the 7th year, it's 20,000. Let's say every year when it's closer to its growth, it's worth more, right? That's how it works, right? By apartments, you buy an apartment on paper, as we say in Israel, right? Then what? It's worth much less. If it's the middle of the building, more. Fully built, even more, right? So says about, wait a second. If he left the field after the 5th year, then the shvach, the amount of money that it's worth, he deserves to get that. Even though he doesn't deserve to get the actual shikma, but it's not all or nothing. It grows gradually by percentage and relativity. So he says, I worked the field like, excuse me, Achamor, sorry, and I worked hard, and I was fantasizing. Now, what do you mean fantasizing? I knew I'm not going to get the shikma because I knew I'll not be there for 7 years. So what? But I believe just like a full worker gets the whole shikma, a worker that worked 50% of the time should now get cash money from the owner of 50% of the shikma. It's not all or nothing. It's relative, says Abaye. No. Not only he doesn't get the shikma, he doesn't get the shvach either. Mapitom. He didn't work for it. You knew you're not going to get the final product. The final product arrived, so to speak, after you left. And it doesn't go by relativity. It's all or nothing. Either you get the shikma because you stuck long enough, 7 years until it grew. If it didn't grow all the way through, you didn't work on it, you didn't lose from it, you didn't care about it, it's a tree. Stop. Grows there in the corner. What did you do for that? Did you work for it? No. You wanted it? How would it be? The president of the US? I actually don't. Yeah. I want 10 Lamborghinis. Ma kesher. In other words, B'chlekes Abaye and Rava is, do you look at the shikma as relative, stage by stage, and each stage has its value, so automatically is the owner as what? As Chachir? And Rava says, no, it's not by percentage, it's all or nothing. It's true, had I sold it, I would have gotten more. So what? But Lamaisa Mitzad your rights, it's all or nothing. When it's fully grown, you get it. If it's not fully grown, the product is just not there. Then we're going to ask many questions about Abaye and Rava. You can also ask your questions at 10:25 and not now. Basically, question now. A person accepted the field again as a chachir. Rashi says it's only a chachir. Ramban says it's also oris. Same agreement. The Giaz Malalot says it's time to go as agreed. Now we're not talking about shikma here. Maybe we're going to discuss that. I'm a kablan, chachir, oris. Came time for me to leave. Shtamin loy. There are certain products in the field that are not ripe. They're not fully there. But I was there while they were growing. And shamin, we assess, we evaluate how much they're sold when they're half done or 3/4 done. And then in cash, we give the kablan who's leaving. My love, shamin lo b'shvach shikma. L'choira, Abaye is right. Let's assume shamin lo includes shikma. The shikma didn't make it all the way to the climax, to its full growth, but we still assess, it's 5 years old, it's already worth more. 3 years old, worth less. You see, Abaye is right and not Rava. Dr. Gemara, no. Shamin lo yarka v'silka. The vegetables and the selek, the green vegetables and the selek could be beetroot. Those vegetables, they're the ones that we assess. He doesn't pick them when he goes, and these are things he worked on. No pain, no gain, mister. He worked on the vegetables and says, I'm leaving after, I don't know, a certain date, and those vegetables, I should be paid for how much it would be worth in the market, and he gets paid for that. Yarka v'silka, nakor v'nishkot. Vegetables, pick them and go. Why are you kvetching? Why are you getting an assessment? Why are we saying we assess how much the vegetable, the tomato is worth, and the beetroot and the spinach, and that why? Nakor, take them, pick them, mister, before you go, take them and sell them in the market. You worked on them, you deserve them. Because vegetables grow very, very quickly. Answers the Gemara, Bedolimata Yomi Deshuka. Even if they're fully grown, Lamaisa, the market day has not arrived. Let's say market day is only in 2 weeks' time. Now he cannot pick them and keep them for 2 weeks, because I think in the times of the Gemara there were no fridges and no freezers in the world. So I was told, right? And therefore, because it's not feasible for him to actually take the fully grown tomato that's not going to stay very nicely out of the fridge for 2 weeks until the next market day, because of that technical reason, he says, listen, I worked on the tomatoes. Happens to be that Chaf Zayin Elul is when our lease is over. The tomato is nice and almost ripe. If I take it out, I'm going to lose. Then you say, you're right, mister. We assess how much it's worth. You get it instead of red tomatoes or tomatoes, you get cash instead. But the shikma, no. The shikma you didn't work on. And the shikma, anyways, is not ripe, so to speak. And Rava would still stick to his guns and say, no, shikma doesn't grow, by percentage. It's either there or not there. You missed the 7th year's growth. Sorry. And you knew that all along. Nobody's cheated here, yeah? He knew he's coming for 6 years, and the shikma takes more than 6 years. So what do you want, says Rava. So, of course, Abaye has his reason. We're now explaining Rava. Toshma, come in here, a brisa. A person is working as an oris, as a chochir even. Shmita came, can't work anymore. Shamin loy. Then we have to assess all the vegetables and fruits that were there from the 6th year. We have to assess, and and then he goes home and we assess whatever is growing there up until Shemitah, and then he gets in the form of money. Why? Shvis mikam afka'ara? Shvis doesn't stop anything. Let him stay in the field. Of course, he can't work the field, but Lamaisa, the agreement can continue. Let's say the agreement was for 10 years, yeah? And happens to be the 4th year was Shemitah, of their agreement. So what? You stay there, you learn Torah next to the field, like we see in all the pictures of the Shemitah, and you can also enjoy the vegetables. Of course, you can't put a fence. Other people should be allowed in, but nothing really stops. The fact Shemitah came doesn't automatically put a halt and a stop on the agreement between the Chochir and the Balabais. So it must be this Brisa is wrong. The Brisa, you read it wrong. Ela Ema, must be the story is different. And Mekabel Sodim Mechaveo, Digia Yoivel Shomin Loi. Oh, a person is a Chochir or an Oris, came the Yoivel. What happens in Yoivel? All the fields go back to the original owners. So you assume the Kablan goes home and it goes back to the original owner. What? What do you mean? Frag Digmar, that's also wrong. The Akati, I still have a question. Yovel mimafka kablonus? A Yovel doesn't stop a person from working in someone's. What's a Kablan? You guys tell me. Is a Kablan an owner? No. A Kablan is either a glorified worker or a renter. Yeah, but he's not an owner. The whole vort of Shemitah is what? Look what the Gemara says. Litzmisus Omar Rachmana, which means, Litzmisus means forever, which means the land should not be sold. Mark my words, sold forever. A land that was sold, should you go back to the original owner? There's no selling here. There's no selling. Let's say this field remains in the hands of the same person who owned it, him and his father and his forefather from the times of Yeshua bin Nun. He just has a worker there who's like either a glorified worker who works per percentage or a renter. Why should that stop by Yovel? Ma kesher. Nothing stopped. Ownership stopped. That's not ownership. So what's your problem? Must be again something in the version of the Brisa is wrong. You're misreading the Brisa. Ela ema, and here comes the final, real good version of how to read the Brisa. Alokeach sodom echaveiroi, alokeach sodom echaveiroi, vegia yovel. A person who bought a field, not mekabel, he mamish bought a field from his friend. The yovel came. What happens when the yovel came? We say, I'm so sorry, mister, but last time I read in Parshas Behar, you're a buyer. I'm the one who owned it before you, and so did my forefathers since Yeshua bin Nun. Say goodbye nicely to the land and leave. Oh, and excuse me, I was the owner for the past 48 years. Yeah. Now I have those tomatoes or the shikma or the something that's in the middle of growing, which I invested. Then shomin loy, we say you're right. For whichever reason, what we sham, and we assume now the shuma is on what? On the shikma. And he says, I was the owner for many, many years, for 48 years. I was the owner, me and my father, and we grew shikma there. The shikma was just there, 6.5 years, almost getting to its climax, to the good part. Shomin, it was my land. I planted the shikma. Give me what? I won't get the shikma because I'm kicked out legally and halachically. But give me what? Evaluate me, the shikma, and pay me 90% of its value. Let's say it's 6 years old, and yet we see that we do that. And Rava says not to do that. Maybe you say no. We're sham in Yarka Vasilka. Maybe you're going to say the same as before. We don't talk about the shikma over here. We talk about vegetables, and the vegetables that are there, we sham to him. Silka v'yarka b'yovel efkerahu. Vegetables in yovel are hefker, or anyhow hefker, right? Even if you're the real owner, don't give me this victim look. Oh, I worked and now I'm kicked out. Even if you're the owner, you won't be the owner of the vegetables anymore, because owners of vegetables in Shemitah yovel are not the owners. Only shikma is not hefker. You know, shikma is not hefker because it's not something you eat. It's not something edible, so it's not hefker. Elalav shvach shikma. Question on Rava must be that what? Excuse me, we have to stay 2 more minutes. Shvach shikma. In other words, because you have a shikma here that grew up to almost maximum and he worked on it, now he says, give me the relative value of that shikma. And he's right. Why won't we say the same thing over here by Rava with the Kablan? I'm there for that long and I don't get anything, and I expect it to be paid by percentage by the growth of the shikma, but the relative growth. Tirgama Abaye liba de Rava, again, a very noble thing. The Amoraim do that often. We saw that recently. Abaye is answering for his opponent. Abaye is explaining Rava's opinion. Shani Hosam Doma Krov V'Yotzo Mimkar. Yeah, over there it says V'Yotzo Mimkar Bais. Mimkar Choizer, Shevach Ein Choizer. Oh, very good. There it says that whatever you sold goes back, but the Shevach doesn't go back, which means what the actual ownership of the land. Say goodbye, Charlie. You're not the owner anymore. Yovel came out, but the Shevach is still yours. It's Exeris HaKosuv, that the ownership over the land is not yours anymore. But whatever you worked on, relatively the Shevach, the value that you invested remains yours, and you have to be reimbursed. Why won't we learn from Yovel to the case of a Kablan? Just like by Yovel, you pay person relatively for what he did, here too you should pay him. And says the Gemara, it's not the same as I kept hinting to you all the time. There he was the real owner. He worked on it and he was the owner of it. He was the real owner of the Shikma. He was full owner for 48 years, 48 and a half years. The Shikma was his, the trees was his, everything was his. Now you're kicking him out? You should. It's Yovel. But give him all the relative growth that he invested. It was his. The Yovel of Kata de Malkei. The Yovel takes him out of his hands. Over here, you're not the owner. You're just the Kabbalan. You're not the owner, says Rava. Are you the owner? No. Did you work on it? No. Did you think you're going to stay there for 7 years? No. So why do you want the relative gain? Says Rava. You're learning from the Yovel. There, the one who claims back the relative gain, the profit, he was the real owner. He says, I was the owner. You can't stop it cold turkey. It's like people leaving a company, right? Give me the relative gains that I have. A partner. The partner leaves the partnership. Even if he halachically has to leave the partnership, he's going to get the relative investment that he invested, right? Hopefully, if they're doing the right thing. Mashenkin, you're just a kablan. The kablan worked on tomatoes. The shikma was growing in the side. It wasn't your shikma. It wasn't yours. Imela, why do you claim that you want the percentage? It's not yours, not even percentage of the shevach. We stopped in a relatively good spot here. We're still in the middle of the sugya of Shevach, of the Kablan. We are continuing BSD Selling tomorrow from the words of Rav Papa. We are in the last narrow line. Rav Papa Kabilah, Stobat Rav Papa, very, very much in the middle of that business of receiving and not receiving Shevach of Shikma or other things, as we're going to see tomorrow. Thank you very much, and thank you to everyone that watches us, everyone that came here today to the Abbas Shalom Kol and Bechemish. Thank you to everyone who watches us on YouTube, Torin Time, and Kol Lashon. Thank you. Have a great day. May we become prepared for Yom Hadin, BSD Hashem, full of Torah and mitzvahs. Thank you very much. Have a great day.